We don't have much time, so let's not screw around any longer. Tell me about the accessible COVID-19 statistics tracker.
So, when all of this started, I was looking for a lot of data around just something that would inform me as to what was going on. And a lot of what I found was in graphics. So it was showing a graph and it would show like a curve. A lot of people talked about flattening the curve, or it would show, here's all the states and here's where they are. There were some heat maps. And so by that, I mean that it would show you a map of like the US, for example, or a map of the world. And based on the severity of cases in certain areas, it would kind of make those areas different colors. But a lot of this did not translate into very accessible data, and it did not allow us as blind people to be able to parse that data. So I created CV Stats. It uses data from worldometers.info, and it aggregates this data in currently 3 separate sections. The first is just kind of an overall global list of information. So global amount of tests, global cases, global recovered, things like that. And as more data is added, that list kind of gets longer by default. And the next piece is a data points on various countries. So it's a table. And as you go through the table, you see different countries. You can sort it by whichever column you would like. But ultimately, there's a lot of different sort of data points in that table. And it includes things like the density, population density, which is kind of what you get from the heat maps that I was talking about earlier. It talks about the tests per country, how many tests have been ran, the total number of cases, recovered, deaths, things like that. And then farther down, there's a table that you can expand as well that does the same exact thing for the states. So it covers all states. And oddly enough, it also covers the cruise ships that were also involved in this kind of when it started out. I don't know why those are considered their own states, but they are. So essentially this website, it's been really popular. I get sometimes the API goes down and I just have to wait for it to come back up or I have to get in touch with the people that run it. But it's been interesting because I initially did this just kind of a project to learn the framework that I'm using, which is React, for a job that I was starting at the time.
And what is React?
And it's a JavaScript framework. So essentially it allows you to build applications, like single page web applications or other types of applications, but really this is a single page application. So it's what a lot of people, a lot of companies and developers use to make sort of interactive applications that you can run in your browser, which is kind of how a lot of data is being presented and how a lot of applications are being used currently.
Yeah.
So I wanted to learn React, and I just started kind of building this out to help me learn that. And initially I had started just by writing a quick API or a quick program for myself that just showed this all in text and tables and columnized and things like that, and I could query it for data. But then I realized that, it'd be really cool if other people had access to this because this solves my problem, but it doesn't solve the problem for anybody else. And so that's kind of where this came from. I think to date, it's had well over 300,000 visitors, if not more. I haven't looked in quite a while, but a few weeks when I looked, it was way over 200,000. So, and it's been really useful for people. So it's been really cool to see, to be able to have an impact. So the interesting thing about that is there was recently, I was interviewed for a news article, I think it was Vice. There have been a few, but there was a news article that basically was talking about the accessibility issues, because the issue specifically is that if you want to see state-specific data, you have to go to the state's website. And a lot of them in testing, I was asked to do some testing on some preliminary testing for this reporter. And what she also did was run it through Wave, which is a it measures accessibility. And obviously it doesn't catch everything, but there were in most of the states' governmental websites that they built to provide data about COVID-19 and to show statistics, there were accessibility issues. So this kind of takes away not only having to dig through this website to find the data that you're looking for, but it makes it really easy. So if you have, family or friends in different states, you just look at their state and you can see what's going on around them. And interestingly enough, the sighted people that I've shown this have started using it as opposed to going and searching for the data, because it's just easy to view visually as well because it's in a tabular form. And you don't have to look through news articles and click through ads and click through slides and, sort of try to parse graphics and things like that. So this kind of highlights a really cool concept where if you make something accessible by default, it tends to improve the usability for everybody across the board. And that's kind of cool. And that they've done a lot of research studies about things like that as well. But so this actually hits multiple multiple groups of people, and not specifically just blind people. It hits other people with disabilities as well.
Okay. All right. Here we are on the web page. It is called
Accessible COVID-19 Statistics Tracker-Microsoft Edge.
And I am using JAWS with Microsoft Edge, the very latest version, the Chromium version. And let's go down through this page.
Accessible COVID-19 Statistics Tracker heading. For many people with disabilities, much of the data available regarding the COVID-19 left parent coronavirus right parent outbreak is in a graphical format, which is impossible to access. It is my hope that this site can serve to solve the lack of information by making critical statistics available in a text format that is easy to read and understand.
Okay, and that's exactly what this does. So we can look at, for example,
Global Stats heading level 2 button collapsed.
Global Stats.
Country Stats heading level 2
Country
button
stats.
collapsed. Breakdown of states in the United States heading level 2 button collapsed.
And that's breakdown of states, which is what I would like to look at.
Enter.
So I'm going to
Accessible COVID-19 Statistics Tracker-Microsoft Edge heading level 2 button.
Okay, and here we are on this page.
Accessible COVID-.
And what's really great about this is that it puts all of the data that is often displayed graphically in what Tyler referred to as a heat map. It puts it in a nice table that we can navigate very easily, and JAWS renders it very understandably in using very basic JAWS commands. So I'm going to move to the table.
8 columns and 63 rows. To sort the table by the values in a column, click or press enter on the column header. Column 1, row 1.
Now I can move down
state.
the column by using the JAWS commands to move through columns and rows. I'm going to move down with Control Alt down arrow.
New York, row 2. California, row 3. Texas, row 4, Florida, row 5, New Jersey, row 6, Illinois, row 7, Massachusetts, row 8.
Okay, there's Massachusetts. So let's see what today's stats are for right now.
Cases, 110,338, column 2.
Okay, that's the number of cases.
Active cases, 8,968, column 3.
Active.
Cases reported today, 0, column 4. Deaths today, 0, column 5. Overall deaths, 8,213, column 6. Tests, 977,311, column 7. Tests per 1,141,793, end of row.
Okay, so some of the data where it was 0, I think it's just because it's too early in the day for that data to be reported. But look, if we want to pick one of these columns and compare them to some of the other states, let's find out.
Tests, overall deaths, 8,000 deaths today. Cases reported today, 0. Active cases, 8,968,
let's look at active cases.
column 3.
So that's Massachusetts. I'm going to go up and see another state.
Illinois, 28,358. New Jersey, 98,150. Florida, 180,528. Texas, 108,112. California, 203,706. New York, 261,819. Row 2.
And there you have it. Let's move on. I just want to talk a little bit about yourself because I think you have an interesting story. So you have a degree in computer science from Wentworth in Boston, correct?
Yes.
And so your first job out of college, when after getting your degree in computer science, was at Freedom Scientific. Can you just kind of tell us just very quickly, like what about what you did there at Freedom Scientific and what Freedom Scientific actually does for those who don't know?
Yeah, so Freedom Scientific makes software and hardware. I was in the software side of the company, and their kind of big sales are Zoom, which is a magnification program, Inspect, which is it builds off of JAWS, which is a screen reader to test web accessibility, and JAWS, which I already mentioned, is a screen reader. I was specifically working on JAWS, and while I was there, I did a lot of different things, but kind of one of the more cool things was working on Adobe to kind of make it better in certain instances, and also bringing a lot of different support to Kindle. So Amazon worked with us while I was there to kind of help find issues in their Kindle desktop application accessibility-wise that we could that would allow JAWS to work with it better specifically. So a couple of the more important things that I did while I was there is bringing table support to books. So if you're reading a book, you can navigate tables just like you would in Safari, for example, or Firefox. And also to bring MathML support to Kindle as well. So that allows you to, if the book is marked up properly, to see equations and to be able to kind of drill down into those. And JAWS actually has that support natively. So if you're reading something on Wikipedia, for example, you can also use that same support.
Okay. And then, so you worked there for a few years, and now this year you've taken a new position here in Boston, or at a Massachusetts company called Curriculum Associates.
Yes.
And tell us just very briefly what you're doing at this company now.
Yeah, so Curriculum Associates is an education company. They do a lot of like e-learning, basically allowing students and teachers to be able to gauge like where you are. There's also like a lot of lesson plans and learning through their platform. So I specifically work on the Brigance project, which is for younger kids. I think it's like up to 5 or 6 years old or so. But most of what I've been doing is kind of performance and security related. So making the website run faster, making sure that it's secure, making sure that user data is safe, things like that. I've always kind of worked a lot in the back end, and you can kind of see that from CV stats. Like it's a very plain website, and that's sort of intentional because it's easier to read and look at. But also, front-end design is always kind of tough. So I've always found that we're doing back-end work, which is how you load the data and render it, and making it load and render faster is kind of where my strength is.
Okay. Tell us what tools you use as a blind software engineer. What assistive technology and what esoteric technology you're using for to actually get the job done?
So I typically use JAWS. I've been using JAWS since I was 6 or so. So it was actually really cool for me to be able to work on the source code of the JAWS and to be able to see like how it all ran and how it worked and to be able to contribute to it since I've been using it so long. And for development, I typically use Visual Studio, Notepad++, which are 2 different editors. And I do a lot of work on Linux-based systems, or BSD is actually where I spend a lot of my time because that's what I run mostly. And that's always through a shell, so you can use PuTTY or something like that. And then I use a Braille Display, which the commission actually got me while I was in school, for not really for coding so much, because I grew up with, my mother was kind of a single mother and working and going to school at the same time, so we got our computer on the grant, so there's no way I was getting a Braille Display. But definitely for reading math, because I still do a lot of math-based stuff. And I used to use a Mac. I don't have one anymore, but it was actually really cool for kind of building out like iOS apps and testing them and kind of doing different things with that.
Okay. What tools do you use in your daily life, just outside of work?
I use my phone a lot. We're actually really, really lucky. I remember when I was really young, I used to walk around with a rolling backpack of stuff. Like when we travel, we lived in Phoenix and my family's in Colorado, so it was like a 6-hour drive. So when I would move or when we'd go somewhere, I'd have to pack a couple Braille books and my Braille light and a talking dictionary and those big talking book players, and everything has just sort of condensed itself down onto my phone. So I use Seeing AI a ton, voice meter, things like that, and it's pretty much how I accomplish most of my tasks, or how I get everything done that's not on the computer.
Okay. And what skills or qualities do you think contribute to professional success for a visually impaired professional?
I think the two that I would have to say are adaptability and networking. Adaptability primarily because you may not have the technical skills to accomplish everything, but finding other ways to get something done. One of the hardest things about being a blind employee, pretty much anywhere, regardless of what a lot of people say, is that you have to not be a burden on other people. And in the cases that you are, how do you find a ways to say, I can't do this. If you can help me with this, I will help you. I'll take up the slack and do, this other task. So just being able to really think about things and solve problems and kind of work through things, because a lot of people get lucky in college and have a really good disability services office, but you don't get that in the workforce. Networking is incredibly important. And it goes even as far, when I was in school, some of the people, oddly enough, that were most helpful to me were the food services people, so the people in the cafeteria. And there was a lot of construction going on in my senior year, and they would always find me and say, hey, this pathway that you take to go to this building is blocked off, so you might want to go this way. Or, they would always kind of look out for me. And I think making as many connections as possible and, making the meaningful connections and caring about people and communicating with them is always going to get you a really long way. And that pretty much applies everywhere. Working during school, pretty everywhere.
Okay.